Sharing games from your childhood can be difficult. Aging hardware, pricey games, and the knowledge that either of these not only take up space, but could die at any moment, then it's no wonder that many decide to sail the 7 seas to play their favorite retro games. Luckily, some companies are taking decent steps to release their old games so you can share them with future generations without downloading them from some shady ROM site. The Disney Afternoon Collection is one such compilation. But is it worth getting this collection to share, or are you best served boarding your seagoing vessel? We'll find out today here on Kid Game Breakdown. Released by Capcom April 18th, 2017, the Disney Afternoon Collection offers a plethora of late 80s and early 90s nostalgia. Even someone who didn't experience these games as a kid can appreciate the confetti menu and the 8-bit music. This delightful menu hosts the various sections of the collection, the first section being Game. This is where the 6 Capcom-made Disney NES games are housed. The next section is Music, which hosts 8-bit tunes from each of the games, and let's be honest, the DuckTales theme is still a banger, even in 8-bits. Then in Gallery, we have a number of pictures that includes reference art that was used while creating the game, scans of the original boxes, and other miscellaneous art. And last is a rather lackluster options section. Entering the game section, we can select from 6 games with the initial launch windows of 1989 to 1994. The oldest game, DuckTales, is a fan favorite platformer, though personally I find the controls a little clunky and unresponsive at times. I doubt that this is due to emulation issues, however. As you will see throughout this video, the emulation of these games is immaculate. Gameplay of every game runs well and is smooth and is free from any of the jitteriness or missing sprites that I've seen in some emulators, as well as offering standard features such as filters, scale options, borders, and of course a rewind feature. I'm sure some of my problems could be resolved by practice, because this is coming from someone that is finding it more and more difficult to transfer my video game skills, even when it's just a simple alteration of button layout. The next game is Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, which is another platformer based on another series that showed up so early in my memory span I only really remember the theme song. While this game feels kind of like a sped up Super Mario 2 with a pinch of Metal Gear, to me it was the most fun out of the box, especially during my initial impressions. It plays well and is decently placed, and like DuckTales, the hitboxes are a tad bit large, but Chip 'n Dale is much better at teaching you its mechanics, especially in an era where manuals were a required read. The Tailspin game is from a series that I remember even less about than the other two. The game is also the odd one out of the collection, as it's the only title that isn't a platformer. Instead, Tailspin is a side-scrolling shooter with a fairly unique ability to fly upside down and scroll the screen in reverse, at least to certain points in the level. I personally didn't like the game at first, but it did get more fun as I played, though it still remains one of the weaker titles of the bunch. It's quite difficult, and the handling isn't fantastic. But the next game is Darkwing Duck, and all I remember about Darkwing Duck is that I thought he was cool. And ironically, this game is likely the most functional and responsive of the collection. The gameplay feels like a mixture of Mega Man and Bionic Commando, which are both Capcom classics in their own right, albeit without the grappling hook from Bionic Commando, and perhaps a little bit easier than either of the games, but still difficult to modern standards. DuckTales 2 is basically the same as the original, albeit with a more streamlined control scheme. It still has some problems with responsiveness, especially with the golf swing, even more so than the original in my opinion, but at least they did make it easier to pogo jump with your cane. And closing out with a release in 1994 in North America and the EU, we have Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, which is again like the original, though it does look better. it is much more difficult. So is this collection worth getting as an adult? Well, kind of. For the price of $20 when not on sale, you get the definitive way to play these games in this collection. The emulation is great, and it is a legal way to possess and share these games, even if you're like me and didn't play them as a kid and have no nostalgia. However, I don't think that these games, even at their best, have much of a fun factor in the modern era, outside of the historicity of the games or a nostalgic mind frame. This means that it isn't really worth getting for a kid. While I'm not saying that it's a waste of time to try to share these games with your kid, it's just they likely won't be interested or entertained by them. I remember a time before I had my own console when my dad bought a plug-and-play Atari system and finding the games old and myself disinterested, at least when compared to the PlayStation 1 my grandfather had purchased the family for Christmas one year. I didn't really appreciate the appeal, charm, and quirkiness of these older games until I was an adult and began exploring video games history. Let's face it, modern phones would have absolutely blown our minds as kids, and we are as a society spoiled for choice for games. Going back to the NES now is a much bigger leap technologically than me going back to the Atari from a PlayStation 1. But let me know what you think about introducing classics to others in the comments below. Check out my previous video on Kart Rider Drift and consider subscribing. Until then, this has been Rob the Slob, and I'll see you in the virtual commute.